Hello. David, if you're trying to say anything, you are muted.
Oh, there we go. Cool. Well, wait a minute for people to come up, and then we'll get started.
All right, sounds good.
You're not getting any background sound, are you?
Nope, sounds good.
There's a lot of fog today in the city, and there's a fog horn I can hear in the background. Pretty weird. I wonder if I like play something light underneath it. Did that come through? Is there music?
There's something coming through. It isn't identifiable as music though.
Okay. Maybe I can play something light in the background. All right, are we leveling out?
Uh,
We may have fewer people here today.
yeah.
I blocked it's members only now.
Ah,
So it's possible we had like 500 people who weren't paid members before.
that makes sense.
Okay, cool.
What's
Yeah,
up?
I think we're trying office hours with only full members this time. See what happens. See how it is. A little smaller, but I think it's good.
Yeah.
Um, cool. Well, thank you everybody for coming. This is the weekly MidJourney office hours. As the name suggests, we do them every week, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Basically, what I do is I start off and just talk for a little bit about what we're working on, what we're thinking about, and then just take questions for a bit. So let's get started. Let's see. Two biggest things right now are trying to get to our new moderation system and trying to get to our new default V5 style. And um, the moderation stuff we tested yesterday for about 6 hours. The main goal was just to test how many weird edge cases there were, and we did find a few weird edge cases, but not that many. I think we had a little button at the end if it blocked the thing, somebody could say like, I think this was blocked, I think something is wrong. And I think we only had 400 people. We only had like 400 people click that button out of like 100,000 blocks. So that suggests it might be working quite well, actually. But what we're going to do over the next couple days is we're going to look at every single one that somebody flagged and then some of the ones that people didn't flag, and we're going to try to fine tune things a little more and make sure that it hopefully has as few edge cases as possible. And then we're going to flip it over. I think we found that in general it blocks like 2 to 4x less than the previous one blocked, and that like a lot of the previous prompts that were blocked were kind of innocent prompts, like talking about like Philip K. Dick or something, or Moby Dick, not like, yeah. And now the new system kind of reads the words in context and doesn't have any issues with that. Um, so I'm hoping that like makes the experience a lot better for people. We are probably going to try to increase the rules a little bit, somewhere around like around public figures a little, and we're not really sure exactly what that should be. We're going to start off where it's sort of like, if you want to try to create something that seems kind of just like really distasteful with a public figure, hopefully it will try to just stop those things. And obviously that's like somewhat subjective. Um, we're open to suggestions. We'll have a new channel that people can talk about moderation in, or else we're going to try. Um, so I think we'll see. I think that we're gonna have to. I think we're gonna have to clamp down a little bit, particularly as the like election cycle comes up. I think MidJourney is. I think we're more about exploration than we're about like political opportunism. And so I think I haven't quite figured out like what to do there. We may play around a little bit, but it's tough because like people use real names for legitimate things. Like people will like take real names and they'll blend a bunch of actors together to try to create a character that looks a particular way, you know? Like there's a lot of legitimate uses for the names, but um, yeah, there's also sort of like things that are borderline and things that I think just makes everyone feel bad. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm open to suggestions. If people think that like they want to make Biden cat boys and it doesn't allow that anymore, like let us know. Like we'll definitely, I think, be thinking about things a bit. But I think it's gonna be hard. I think we're gonna try to strike a balance. Uh, I think we're gonna try to strike a balance, and if we can't, I will probably just like ha throw a hammer down, and we'll just see how that goes. But like I think in general, yeah, I think in general I probably lean towards blocking stuff because like my goals don't require a lot of these images in terms of like, philosophically with like what I'm trying to make. But I do understand how like Midjourney sort of represents yeah, like the has a sort of a represents a sort of freedom of action and movement, and there's some balance between that that freedom of movement and the sort of like preventing people from taking over the platform with bullshit. Um, sensationalism or, basically trying to make people mad and make money off of that. So I don't know. I haven't quite. I think in an ideal world, we might just like moderate the users instead of the content, but I don't think we're quite ready yet with that in terms of infrastructure. So maybe in the future, we're gonna have like a new moderation system where if somebody puts a weird image out there, we can like backtrack it to the individual user and then just hard ban them. And just like basically say like if you cause drama, with an image, we're gonna, very high likelihood of getting banned, so just don't do it, and then just like be really aggressive there. But I'm not sure. Like it's hard to say like the right way to do this because I mean some people will purposely create drama and then they'll say like that was $30 well worth it. And so, it's hard to figure out what the right balance is. I honestly don't know. All I know is that the current word ban system has a lot of stupid failure cases. And I know that there are a lot of things people can do with the current word ban system that are, pretty nasty still, that don't really make anyone feel good. And it's hard to fix those with the banned words. So I think the hope is to try to moderate sentiment rather than subject a little bit. Um, like if somebody wants to do a picture of Trump that looks really nice, then that's fine. But if people want to, make pictures of, I don't know, people being murdered or something, like maybe there's just another place to do that. Um, you know? So I don't know. It's hard to, yeah, like we'll see. So we'll definitely like be trying some stuff and taking input and seeing if we can strike a nice balance rather than having to just like bring a heavy hammer down. But that's a big thing I've been thinking about, just to try to strike a nice balance. I think that because we can use AI stuff to moderate AI stuff, it potentially allows the opportunity to be nuanced in a way that no one's been able to be nuanced before. So I think it's worth trying. And if it doesn't work, we'll be more strict. But if it does work, then wouldn't that be nice? I think it's everyone deserves us to try to make it work. So we're doing that. Hopefully we'll do another test in the next few days. I don't know if it'll be like literally 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, but we're going to try to do another test of the moderation system once we, fix up the edge cases. Um, and, I do think that a lot of people talked about this, but the new system does, I think on the whole, is quite a bit more freeing than the old system. Like it allows a lot more, a lot of things that the other one didn't. So I think on the whole, it's actually pretty good. Anyway, we're also trying to get out this more like opinionated V5 style. And we want to make V5 the new default style, but the problem is that like V4 is much easier to use still. So we have a thing that we're testing. I would say that the guides and mods on the whole like it. It's like maybe a little too opinionated. So I'm like, and it's a little, maybe like a tiny bit blurrier. So I'm like trying to tune it a little bit I think I got it a little sharper. I think we have another version that might be a little less opinionated. I'm gonna try that, and then we're gonna test it with the guides and mods again, and then if people are happy, we're gonna flip that over, and then we're gonna have this sort of and then we're gonna have this sort of raw mode, which you'll be able to click under /settings, and the raw mode will be more like the current system. Um, should be very similar. So I'm gonna try to update the sort of unopinionated style and the opinionated style, and um, and yeah, and then we'll try to let people like still flip back to the old stuff too. So we'll see how that goes. And we released some new Niji styles. There's a new scenic style that people are liking. It kind of makes these sort of beautiful scenery and people in beautiful scenery. Um, let's see what else is going on. There's like we're working a bit on controllability and like more real-time stuff, but I don't know when those are going to ship. We've worked on a little bit more personalization. I don't know when those will ship. I think we're gonna these sort of two things shipped first, and then we're gonna kind of go down the list. Um, we've been working a lot on getting the web stuff working better on the alpha side, and I think we're working on getting the global search working a bit better again. So hopefully we've got search going again soon. And V6 is training, and we're seeing some interesting results. That said, I think the V6 is going to take a bit longer than I was hoping. So I think it's a combination of like, I think I think it's a combination of like we probably need to get more of the team to focus on just V6 stuff. And I think we probably also have a few people who are out. And then I think that some of the things are a little harder than we thought. So I would say there's definitely some good progress. And I'm very confident that it's going to be quite impressive. But it might take a little longer than we're hoping. So it's churning, but I think my goal of like doing a release every 30 days, not quite there yet. I think we're going to need a lot more infrastructure. So we are still having like, little updates every week. I hope people appreciate those. But the bigger updates are still quite challenging. I think we're going to see a pretty big shift on V6, and then there's some V7 stuff moving too with better language understanding. And I think that's going to be really impressive too. Um, what else is going on? We have started the billing support thing. There's like a billing at midjourney.com. If anybody has billing issues, it will hopefully make it easier to get sort of like a simple billing issue resolved in a predictable amount of time. We have like a small billing team that's just basically doing support now. Please message that if you have any problems. It might take a week to get through at first, but it should be down to a day or two. And a lot of people got their magazines. The magazines, I think, came out quite nice. And the next magazines are in flight. Well, the next one will be a V5 magazine, and I'm sure it'll look very nice too. Feel like, yeah, I'm definitely we're looking at having more text content in future magazines too, like more interviews and little user profiles, maybe some educational stuff. So we're definitely gonna keep making that nicer. I feel like I'm missing something, but I think that on the whole, um, yeah, there's sort of good stuff going, but it's not like the most poppin' week. Definitely, um, yeah, I feel like I'm missing something. Let me like take a second, but mm, 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 mhm. No, I think that's it. So hopefully the next hopefully we'll have the default styles and the new moderation soon. And then after that, maybe we'll do some style and character consistency. We have some research experiments there that are promising, but it's not quite far enough along to know if we will definitely ship it and when we will ship it. But it would be really cool to ship it. We are playing with that. And yeah, I think the rest is kind of progress. Cool. So I think that's it. I think I'm just gonna take some questions for a bit.
Is it working?
Hello.
Hi, David. How are you? I have a very
Hello.
question. It's about a book that I'm reading now. Have you ever read The Stranger by Albert Camus?
No.
Hold on, let me put it in the chat. It's a very oh, Camus, you're right. I am a dope. Anyway, it's a very good book. I wanted to know if you read it. I know you like philosophy, existentialism, stuff like that. Just thought I'd throw it out there.
Cool. I will check it out.
Alrighty, that's it.
That's it? That's it?
Um, yeah, I just wanted to know about your reading list. If you read it, that's it.
No, I have not read that. I mostly read like just science fiction and ancient Chinese literature. Those are probably my two things I mostly read. I'm a bit of a, narrow reader sometimes. I I don't
Have
know.
you
I
read
mean, go ahead.
Man in the High Castle, Philip K. Dick? Have you read that?
No. There was a television series though.
On Prime, yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember if I watched some of the Prime. I'm not sure. No, I don't think I might have watched like an episode or two. Not nope. I am
Y-
like in true military history. It's kind of, but I tend to like. I feel like I'm more from, yeah, yeah. I'm into military history. Although I'm more used to be. I haven't read as much lately. But when I was a teenager, I really loved reading military history. It was sort of like this one area of civilization where like money doesn't matter and people just cared about results, like this weird way, you know. Obviously, there's still politics, but it was like sort of, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, I was just curious if you'd read The Stranger. Oh yeah, Wolfie's right. It's Autism Acceptance Month, and a lot of users on here are neurodivergent. And I'm wondering if you've noticed an increase in creativity and uh, just in general, what you think the overall vibe is of people with autism or other conditions using MidJourney to express themselves.
um, it's interesting.
Yeah, the entire
We
chat is
haven't really
cheering me
tried to
on here.
break. We haven't really had enough people to break down. We're gonna have some people coming in soon that are hopefully gonna do more kind of in-depth like interviews with people and try to break things out. We haven't really looked a lot at the neurodiversity angle, but we have. I think we do have a good sense that like 30% of the people effectively are using it for art therapy, and 80% of the people say it improves their mental health. So
Yeah,
there's
I
definitely
totally
some
see that.
significant improvements there. But I can't say if like the people who it most helps mentally like are people with some specific neurodiversity thing. I mean, a lot of people. It seems like it has a pretty positive effect on pretty normal people. So I don't think it's. I don't. I'm not sure. I haven't really. We haven't really looked at much like neurodiversity correlates. I would say, if that makes
No, it's all
sense.
right. I thought of it because I was trying to learn more about the history of MidJourney and whatnot, and GPT said you founded a company that had something to do with autism, but it was a hallucinated fact.
Hmm.
It said you
Interesting.
founded a company called Ultranauts, but apparently you had nothing to do with it.
No, are you just asking? Like, I mean, I did this company called Leap Motion. I merged it with a friend's company. It's called Ultra Leap now. But
Yeah, I've
yeah,
been properly informed by the server. So those are my questions. Thank you.
of course.
Take care. Have a great one.
You too.
Yeah, as Fnuckle mentioned in chat, at least anecdotally, a lot of the guides and mods are neurodivergent.
Hmm. Hi. So, this is my second time on. It's been a month since I joined as a top tier subscriber. I'm neurodivergent. I'm also queer, non-binary, disabled. A lot of labels. I spend a lot of time working on my prompts. Um, a lot of the time, it does feel like MidJourney understands me in ways that are surprising. Um, so I just, the positive feedback I had originally, my first question to you ever was about multiracial individuals and multicultural and indigenous. And I just wanted to give feedback that V5 is in a lot of ways better than my experiences with V4.
That's good.
V4 just did weird things anytime indigenous was in the prompt, for instance. Um, there's still some interesting things, and I think it's related. You've mentioned your data set is small. Latina is a does strange things in the prompt.
What does
So
it do?
so I put in Latino once as a single word, and I got back like pottery, and it's all
Let's
very Mexican style pottery, which, you know, I I started doing these experiments because I was working in Niji, making multicultural people, and then I noticed the Latinas were flatter, and so I was like, that's odd, you know. And I've just been looking at so many images, I can kind of tell when things are sort of off.
Hmm.
And so a friend and I started testing, just putting in Latina, and if I just put in one word, either I get pottery or I get drawings of Latina women, which is in regular Midjourney. It doesn't even try to do photorealistic. If I type Latina 5 times, I get selfie Latinas. So that's been interesting. I'm gonna try Hispanic next. It's not one of my preferred labels, but I understand it's probably in there somewhere. But yeah, that's
Interesting.
just. But I mean, you know, I've been using things like light brown skin, tan, you know, other descriptors to sort of get the phenotypic features of Latinos are multiracial, so we're not easy to describe. Um, and so yeah, overall it's been a better experience. I've also been trying to have patience with when I hit a wall that's related to one of the labels that pertains to me, not getting too frustrated. Um, But one thing I did want to sort of say is that, you know, I've heard back and forth how long, you know, if prompts will always be around, prompt writing. And I hope so, because some of the work I'm going to be doing going forward is going to be exploring more body types, disabilities, things like that. And kind of the reasons I'm going to be doing that is because a lot of the people in the queer community and in the disabled community have told me that they tried, back when we had free trials, they tried a few prompts and actually got things that upset them. And so, and that I think was back in V4. Um, and so what I have discovered is there's a lot of nuance. Weights are really important. I've been learning a lot about how to use weights. But I've also seen that because of the data set, things are sort of weighed towards a typical shape, a typical color of person. And so I can see if someone doesn't understand the system, that they might type in something and get something that they find upsetting. And it's not necessarily MidJourney's fault. It's just, a disconnect between what the person is thinking and the reality of the training set. And so I just wanted to give feedback that I hope the prompting, writing out always sticks around, because I'm not sure what other way I could learn to essentially curate keywords that I can share with my communities so that they have more positive experiences. That's my goal. I have some people who are now interested in learning prompting for me and starting out their $10 a month to try it out. So, um, so I just wanted to sort of give that feedback. I really enjoy prompt writing. I hope it never goes away. The cultural diversity has been better. I'm still trying to work on body stuff as a woman who's not a skinny woman. It can be challenging, non-binary, gender fluid. It can be challenging because a lot of the words that I think of anatomy as anatomy are banned, boobs and things like that. Um, and I've been able to do things with like chubby, which is not my favorite word, but it works, and other things like that. But it is frustrating having experienced being a woman whose body type is often censored in like the workplace and other places like that in the media. Um, it is frustrating to have to sort of piece myself together with um, adjacent words. And I realize I can put in chubby and just generate a ton of women, and then pick one that I, think represents like my RPG character that I'm playing. But I try to be efficient because I respect the GPU hours and the resources, and so it's not it's I don't like running a ton of prompts. So that's just feedback as a woman, or a assigned female at birth person. And yeah, I had, as the people mentioned in the chat, I am neurodivergent. I'm excited to hear that we'll be getting to talk to more of the team soon, that there'll be new people who can talk to us. I think a lot of us spend a lot of time prompt writing, and we see a lot of things that sometimes you all will say doesn't happen in MidJourney, but we see it happen. And it would be nicer to have a system where we can report, when stuff comes up. Like, oh, it's happening. So like centaurs or text or watermarks, all those kind of things. Um, and then the one real question I had was a lot of the people that I've been collaborating with on prompt writing, and we're all learning from each other, we're interested in where the describe words come from. And if you can say anything about that, like where does MidJourney pull these words from? How's it choosing to describe an image? Things like tooth core and sword punk and mommy on the phone core. Like, where did these come from? We're just
So
really
those
curious.
those come from this thing called Aesthetic Wiki. So it's like a community of
Oh,
There's a thing called Aesthetic Wiki, and they're kind of yeah, it's a community that basically tries to explore aesthetics.
yeah.
And so there's a whole Wikipedia page basically on everything on there.
Okay, and so we could totally go to the, find that and then be able to actually get some insight on what might be in MidJourney.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Okay, very cool. Because yeah,
Mm.
I love the describe feature. MidJourney is not necessarily a good prompt writer, but it does give me the keywords that sometimes get me to where I'm trying to go. So I have been enjoying the describe feature, and a lot of us were curious about where some of these words are coming from. And so is it the same AI that's making the images that's doing describe, or is it a different AI that's sort of related?
It's actually kind of different, unfortunately, which is why like the images don't come out exactly the same when you use those prompts.
Mm-hmm.
We have a way to fine tune it, we think, to make it match more, but we haven't really tried. We haven't really had quite enough time to do that yet. We've been working on controllability stuff instead and some of the new style stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we have some ideas on how to do it.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, we were wondering if it was gonna update, if Describe will update as MidJourney updates.
Yeah,
Um,
it's definitely going to change. We have we have some good ideas already on. We have kind of a backlog of describe ideas. But
okay,
we've been pretty happy with how it is right now. It's pretty fun, so we don't feel like we feel more pressure to try to fix up the other areas, more urgently,
yeah. Oh, one thing I did want to say is, again, coming back to being sort of a typically censored body type, um, cleavage is censored from Describe. And like I don't know, I understand that some people find cleavage offensive, but it's also just like a natural part of being human. And so I was just a little surprised. I get, you know, I put in an image I don't think is terrible, and then Describe says, no, I can't describe this for you. And so
We're
there's
working
just,
on better image filters. Right
okay,
now it uses Google Safe Search, and Google Safe Search, it turns out, is very sensitive to cleavage.
okay. I was just hoping it wasn't
So
intentional.
no, it was hard because like we didn't really have time to build our own image filter, and so we just used the Google one, and it just has edge cases that we have to work on more still.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, and so the other thing, yeah, and so the other thing I've been wondering is about like certain words that seem to get recognized as problematic, like curvy and things like that. Um, like how much is that sort of like really about trying to stop what's happening, or is that more just happening in the AI because other people's behaviors?
was this for the new AI moderation or the one that just blocks words?
Uh, so I had a word blocked, but it wasn't curvy. It was actually I had a noir mouse for an anthropomorphic mouse smoking a pipe, and it deleted my prompt. But um, no, it's just yeah. Sometimes I get like feedback from the system that it doesn't like certain words.
So we're
And then
trying to replace the system with a new thing that doesn't look at specific words, but tries to think more about the context.
okay, yeah.
And so we're hoping that that is going to improve things a lot.
Okay. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's helpful. Like I said, I love prompt writing. I loved working in MidJourney. I maybe do it a little bit too much. Um, uh, I also love rating images because I just love to see what other people are doing. Um, and then I'm looking forward to some of us who spend a lot of time and energy in MidJourney being able to contribute back to development in some way. Um, just because I know MidJourney is sort of this very um, complex and sophisticated but tricky tool. So, oh, and I loved the magazine, by the way. Thank you.
Of course, I'm happy you like it. Yeah, so we're definitely the next data sets on V6 are going to be much larger, and so should be able to handle like much more diverse things.
Hmm.
The new filters will allow like pretty much any word really, if it's like contextually used right.
Okay.
And then we are probably going to have these more biased um, default styles for new users. So that might take it in a slightly worse direction, but then you'll be able to flip to the raw mode where it kind of just, it should be exactly the same as it is now.
Hmm.
Um, we're still trying to figure out how to make it like biased in good ways and not bad ways. So I think you'll
Yeah.
find that the sort of default bias style is like really, really, really good if you have like a simple prompt to want it to look good. with like without like and but you know it might it reduces the diversity of the output slightly in a way that's somewhat unfortunate. It's less than V4, but we're like kind of still working on that. It's sort of a making it kind of like opinionated but not biased in like the wrong in in any way that is like not ideal. It's a kind of a hard balance, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think we're still building like new tools and we're building up a bigger team to make that better. So, but I mean, the good news is that this sort of like I think it's going to be just getting better and better over time, and we're working really hard on it. So, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. And then just one last question. So I ended up getting yeeted into like a back room thing on search a few times. Is that like an Easter egg on the website? Like when I'm doing
What do you
searches?
mean yeeted
It,
into what?
the back rooms. So I'll be doing searches and it will glitch out and it'll give me empty rooms as my result.
Empty, like I mean, just like empty results.
No, like so the back rooms is like a internet phenomenon of like empty spooky rooms. And this was happening a lot last night. I was doing searches trying to understand you know, I've been noticing that MidJourney takes things as contextual and processes things as phrases and concepts. And so I was doing searches on some of those. And then sometimes I would click, I don't know, out of the search thing or click somewhere else, and it keeps sending me to these like empty rooms as like a default glitch thing. Um, so
Hmm.
I just want to let you all know.
Maybe you can send me a screenshot sometime what it looks like.
Yeah, sure. I just thought it was funny because I thought it might be an Easter egg because back rooms are a whole thing.
I
And
don't think we have any Easter eggs.
okay, so yeah, I will definitely send it because it kept happening last night. Luckily, a friend was on with me, and so he's like, "Yeah, it's not something you're doing. It just keeps happening." So I'll submit a picture when it happens again. It's just a strange thing where all of a sudden it's just stock photos of empty rooms. Um, and it's
Really?
yeah, it's a little weird. But yeah, I'll go ahead and submit a picture when it happens again.
Okay. Interesting.
Um,
It's
yeah.
some way the engineers told me that there's an actual bug that does this when yeah, there's some bug that they know about.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But yeah. Oh, did somebody post it? Somebody posted it. Yeah. Uh-huh. I get yeeted into that occasionally. Just empty rooms.
Oh, that's really funny actually. Yeah, that's
Okay.
apparently a bug. It's apparently a bug, but it's a really funny bug.
It is. It made me laugh. So okay. At least it's
And
known.
it's so funny. I
Well,
love
thank
it.
you.
Thank you so much.
Uh-huh. Bye.
Hi, am I on now?
Hello.
Hey, hi, David. Thank you so much for your time. I know this quick fire then. I've been playing around with the style curse, and I was just curious as to what's happening or not happening when you hit the style curse that creates the makes the images look the way they do.
The style curse? What was that? What are you saying?
Yeah, is it style curse?
Stylize?
Sorry,
Stylize? Style cursed.
style cursed. Yeah, sorry if I.
What is style cursed? I'm trying to forget. I remember. I
It's
think
fun.
I think it's like we have some stuff that like tries to prevent the images from being corrupted and low quality, and I think they just turn that up so it makes it more corrupted and low quality. Like I think it's like one of the safeties gets reversed. I think that's what happens.
One of the safeties. Okay. Anyway, because it was just so interesting how.
It tries to make images not look cursed, and I think they just flip it so they make it look cursed instead, and they thought it was funny.
Okay. I'm also curious as to the is it the rank pairs? Is that the name of it? Yeah. I was
Mhm.
curious where those images are coming from, especially since I was been doing some of those, and I noticed that sometimes I'm seeing I guess some personal images on the rank pairs. So I was curious as to where the images that are coming for that?
The ranked pairs come from any image that somebody makes in a public mode, like not private mode. So any image that's not marked private can potentially be used for a comparison
Oh
thing.
wow, so some people are definitely putting in some personal stuff in there. So that's an
Yeah, I mean, some people just like different people have different personal boundaries too.
okay. True enough. Since you answered those very quickly, if I may ask, or just tell you about a little
Mhm.
thing that's happening. Among the myriad of things I do, I serve as a creative director for two art magazines, two national art magazines. Um, in one of them in particular, they do art contests. And one of the issues that they're having is that they're getting a bunch of MidJourney generated images being submitted, you know, to these art contests. There are cash prizes associated with it. I'm not gonna mention it because if I do, I'm probably just gonna get more people, try to submit MidJourney images to that. And I was curious: is there any, in the past they with some other versions they were a little bit easier spot. Now it's getting harder. Um, I'm curious if there anything that way that the publishers can do anything to try to prevent the people who are trying to engage in that fraud.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's something we could definitely think about supporting. I hadn't really thought of that as I hadn't really heard that suggested as like a use case for us having like a validation service.
Yeah,
So
and I know you said in the past about that, and I could see how there could be cases in which people might use that for negative. But in this particular case, like if even if it's like limited access to like the publisher or their employees or whatnot, it's just that it in this particular one, these are contests where it's very clear. It's about using what I'm going to call analog materials, right? And so clearly that's not in the spirit of the contests. Um, anyway.
yeah, we are thinking of having like these validation services where people can tell like if a thing is MidJourney, it was made by AI or not, or if it was MidJourney or not. I think we're like slowly moving towards that. It's definitely something we're gonna have for V6. I wasn't planning on rushing it for V5. I think V6 is where it probably crosses the line to where we probably need to have it. I say that not actually having seen V6, really done yet, but that's where I kind of was planning on doing it. Yeah, I'm not sure if it'll be in V5, but there should be something like that in V6.
Okay, and I'm sorry. Or were you
So
still saying?
that's kind of like the rough plan right now.
Okay, and that would be open to the public, correct? Or
I think we're still trying to figure out what the policy is going to be exactly, but I'm not totally sure what to do. I mean, we're kind of trying to talk privately with a lot of tech companies about how maybe we could work together to do something. And I think one of the challenges is that like if nobody wants to work together, then there's sort of limited impact from us offering this. But if everybody wanted to work together, it could be, really good. So, but a lot like most capitalist industries are really bad at collaboration because everybody is like half in competition mode all the time.
yeah, I've lived there. I know all
Yeah,
about it.
it's hard. It sucks. But I'm spending a bunch of time talking to people and trying to set up collaborations, and we'll see how much actually gets through. But there's a universe where if things collaborate really well, then there could be like some really good ways to make these tools accessible.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go ahead and get off the stage for now because I know you take 2 minutes too long and they start killing you on the chat. All right, thank you very much then.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi. So I do a lot of outreach in queer communities, especially around education. And I've always had some talent for kind of explaining like the really abstract and weird concepts that you might run into in more relatable terms.
Mhm.
And I know that, like, to an extent, some of this is just an intense familiarity with the subject matter. But having listened to Office Hours week after week, it seems like you have some particular talent doing that too. And so I was wondering if there was anything specific you tried to keep in mind when answering questions, if you have thoughts on, where that process of explanation breaks down, or any other advice.
You're kind of asking for advice on just how to best like answer questions of the community. Is that right?
Yeah. How talk good?
How to talk good. The best way to talk good is to talk more. I think that, really, I kind of feel in general like it sounds dumb, but the best way to get good at something is just to do it a lot. I think so that helps. Definitely giving people space to talk is important.
Hmm.
Trying to listen. Sometimes like the best way to be heard is to first listen. There's like something about that. Um, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I used to be pretty awkward for a lot of my life, and I think that it probably came from two things. Like one, just, not having put enough time into it, and another was probably also actually like my relationship with language and words and communication. So, like for a long time, I felt that I didn't really like words. Like, I didn't like language. I felt that like when I was talking to somebody, I felt like a bird flying through the sky and seeing another bird and then having nothing that I could do except for to have some brief moment of screech. And like the idea that like the screech that that like one eagle or big bird does to another is like all the birds will ever know of each other. It felt like it felt sort of like insufficient. It felt sort of wrong. I kind of hated words. And um, it turns out that hating words and having a weird relationship with language actually makes it a lot harder to be good at it. And so, I had a friend that I was talking to about this, and he said, you're right, David. Like, words are in some ways always insufficient, but that doesn't mean language is bad. Like, language in communication broadly is sort of a form of magic. It's like through a series of incantations and vibrations in the air, you can make people feel something or think something or see something. You can change the way they think or the way they live their lives. And it's all just sort of like, these sort of weird abstract vibrations, symbols, vibrations in the air and symbolic, like voodoo, and
Linguamans.
it's sort of cool, like in some ways language is always insufficient, but in some ways it's like this incredibly powerful magic, and it's pretty fucking cool. And if you want to really be, my friend was telling me was like, if David, if you want to really live a life as a full human, you have to kind of learn to sort of love that magic and have it, become like be a part of it and have it be a part of you and all that stuff. And I think weirdly it was pretty convincing, and more than anything, actually, I would say my attitude shifting with respect to language was probably what actually changed my ability to communicate more than anything else. Because if you don't like something, if you're like, man, I don't really like words, but I should get better at it, or if you say, you're like, I kind of like never, I feel like communication is always a lie or always insufficient, always shallow. It makes it hard to actually get to kind of get deep at it, yourself. Like you can
Mhm.
like the attitude for me was probably the biggest thing that held me back. This is not really um this is me just sort of speaking from my own experiences. And so weirdly, probably the biggest thing for me was a sort of shift in attitude with how I felt about language. And when I kind of went from hating language to loving language, I got really good at it fast. Like within a year or two or three, I went from feeling like I was always awkward to people saying, "Oh, David, you're so well spoken," and I was sort of thinking, well, where'd that come from? Uh, and I think it comes from a combination of putting in the time and having sort of the right, I don't want to sound like the right relationship with language on a sort of emotional and philosophical level.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's one of those weird things where it's like, if you want to really get really good at something, maybe like the best way is to like love the thing that you want to be good at, and then just spend a lot of time doing it, you know? So it's definitely, and I actually I've run into this even with, um, there's a lot of successful people out there who I didn't like, and I, on some level, had a hard time learning from them. Like I was like, they probably have something figured out, but I don't really like them. And then
Yeah.
over time, I kind of tried to separate myself out and be like, instead of saying whether I like or don't like the person, like in a broad sense, I'm gonna say, you know, they're really good at this or that. They have some kind of trick. Oh, I love that trick. Like that's a
Mhm.
really cool trick. And then like even though I don't like the person, by loving the tricks and thinking about the things that they're good at, all of a sudden like I'm good at those things. Like Kirby, like it's like a way of like you can like Kirby. It's like a
Yeah.
Kirby. You can like Kirby your enemies or Kirby people you don't really like, but you can gain the good things and lose the bad things. Basically by loving the good things, you can kind of become those good things. And even if
Yeah.
those good things that you love are attached to people that you don't like, it doesn't matter. Just by loving the good things, you kind of just get those things. It's kind of amazing. Like this sort of yeah, there's something really weird about like loving a thing and becoming the thing. And so on some weird level, like there were a lot of people that were like successful in one way or another in the tech industry that made me uncomfortable sometimes. And just by thinking about what they're good at and loving those sort of like special tricks and abilities, I was able to sort of like gain them while still retaining myself. And
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. It's
That's
kind of cool.
good advice, especially around like philosophy in particular. I find it's
Yeah.
difficult to really dig into some of the. I have a, you know, I call it a, fun little game, but just research like any philosopher's name and any controversial topic. And
Yeah.
like you find if you go back and, Google like Immanuel Kant and race or, anything, you just start finding out some very interesting things that they don't really bring up in school. And so it can be very difficult to kind of connect and get a good understanding of that source material when you're coming in with that perspective.
Oh yeah, like I mean, like Alan Watts is like a really good speaker, but he drank a lot of alcohol and died from alcohol, for example. And like on one level, somebody could be like, "Well, he was an alcoholic, so I'm not listening to anything he said." On another level, he could be like, he just had like a really great way of speaking, and the way he structured the information, the way he flowed, like, and sort of like it's one of those weird situations where like instead of focusing on the bad things, focus on all the good things, and then you become all the good things. Like the good things um, are often not the bad things are often not necessary, and the good things are often worth appreciating. And yeah, I mean sometimes the bad things and the good things came together in some weird way, and in a way of like, well, you needed all those things to come together to have that person, but that doesn't mean that those things have to come together to be you. It's mostly
Yeah.
just like a lot of traits the first time you see it come out of some really unusual circumstance. Right? Like an unusual
Yeah,
trait
that's
tends to come
definitely
from
true.
unusual traits tend to come from unusual circumstances. But that doesn't mean that those traits require those circumstances.
Yeah.
So there's definitely something about that. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, trying to not be too judgy, trying to listen, trying to love all the things that you want to be, and just putting in the time. I guess that's my summary.
Yeah, that's That's really helpful. Thank you.
Hmm. There are sometimes like little books too. So, like there's like a how to make friends and influence people. I think it's like a 1900 book. There's like some very famous early books where they talk about just like, how people, how like if somebody's not doing something that you like, it's better to instead of telling them something that they're not doing, it's better to encourage them for something that they're doing that is good, and then by encouraging the good, they kind of become the good things, and the bad things just don't have enough room and they go away. There's lots of like interesting things people have written about people, and it's the one area of literature that really like people fundamentally haven't changed. Um,
I'm always waiting on a Goodreads list from you.
yeah. The How to Win Friends and Influence People. It sounds kind of like the kind of a basic title, but like it's like the most famous book ever written on people,
Yeah,
by like
on
a
LinkedIn
huge
chat.
factor. And it's not that long either. It's kind of folksy. It was like this folksy, charismatic guy who would go around and he would say these things, and it would like, it was really nice.
Thank you. I will.
I don't know. I liked it. I mean, it was something I read when I was a teenager that I liked a lot. That helped me when I was feeling, a little bit like, what? How am I supposed to do this?
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, album is like maybe one last thing is like, I really do think that you kind of are the average of the people you have around you, and so if there's somebody around you who like you really like in this regard, spending more time around them often, like there is a real osmosis thing, you know. And to
Yeah,
some
yeah,
extent, like your friends should be aspirational to the extent it can
yeah.
be, That doesn't have to be 100%, but like, it's like something about that,
Okay. Well, yeah,
That's
thank you
what I
so
got.
much. And it's been great getting to sit in on office hours every week. That's always something to look forward to for me. So really thank you for doing this, and I'll make room for someone else now.
Thank you.
Hi, David.
Hello.
All right. So, yeah, just first of all, thanks for uh, all you've done with all of this. I've really enjoyed using MidJourney ever since sort of the beta times. But one of the things that so I use MidJourney a lot. I'm a game master for uh, an RPG set in like a dystopian science fiction setting, all that sort of thing. And I often try to use MidJourney to create visual uh, representations for my players. And one of the things that I often run into with some of the things, especially with some of the villains or monsters that my player that I'm trying to create representations of, is that I often run up against some of the filters, the violence and gore filters and that sort of thing. There's a lot of people that complain about the other side of the filtering, but that's something that I often find is that even obviously, you know, with the old system, it was just the list of words. I'm wondering if with the newer filter system, when you're dealing with more artistic styles and fantasy content and all of that sort of thing, is that going to be something that's going to be easier?
So the new filters are kind of written in a way where like if something is sort of a fantasy content, it's supposed to be like much more liberal than if it's sort of trying to be super realistic.
Yeah.
Um,
So I did.
like it might even cross. I feel like the new system like might even cross into R-rated if it's not photographic and it's obviously fantasy. Like it might even allow you to cross into R-rated, but it's kind of narrow. Like it's like, but like sometimes like, I want like someone's like, I think I was testing one like a blood demon in a bikini or something. It's like got blood, it's got bikinis. It's got all those things. You know,
Yeah.
uh,
So
some
yeah. So just speaking from personal experience in the brief time that I got to test the the language model version.
Mhm.
There's a particular project that I've been working on that basically involves a creature that is just raw muscle without skin, and I was something that was difficult to get that sort of effect in the original, and I had to come up with some creative words to convince it to do what I wanted. And I noticed that the new filter reacted very poorly to those creative words.
Yeah, so I think we were trying to get the system to like not do super gore. It is possible it's like slightly too sensitive to things around horror. And so we need like just more good examples of that like not working, and we're
All right,
gonna tune it more.
so that after it goes live again, will you be continuing to look at those? Then?
We will, but I don't know how quickly we'll be able to actually
Iterate on it.
change it. Yeah, I don't know how quickly we'll be able to iterate on it or not. But we'll definitely be like constantly looking at it.
All right.
Yeah. We're not really sure yet like how some things are gonna be really easy. Like I think it like blocked pot leaves and that's pretty dumb. But like some things might be more nuanced. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so we're trying to I think it's gonna depend on the issue. Some things should be really easy and some things might be hard.
yeah, and just another thing that I often run up against, which I know is just a limitation of the current system, and I don't know if it's going to be solved with just better models or more or better training data or better language processing or probably some combination of the above. But yeah, I still do, there's still that issue where anytime you ask for something unusual, anytime you ask for a strange number of something, if you want more than 2 eyes or that sort of thing, you basically have to bludgeon it into submission to get it to do that. You have to, you have to like throw the word throw multiple the contracted word multiple eyes, no spaces in there repeatedly, and it'll eventually do it, but it won't put them all on a single face.
Yeah, that has to probably do with I think that's probably more of like a limitation of V6, V5, sorry, and then something with V6 or V7, a lot of those things should get better.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I figured that was something that was going to get better with time, but yeah. It's just something that I've been running into lately on that same project, but it's something I've run into quite often because I'm often creating weird fantasy sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hopefully it's sort of just a technical limitation with the way it's reading the language and the way that it understands concepts, and
Yeah,
we have
and I
some evidence
imagine
that
it
this
just
version
it
will get
probably
better.
it has a lot of, that's something I've noticed is that with eyes it's probably, I imagine it's something that has a lot of data on eyes and most of it is normal.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
something that people really notice when it's wrong, and they don't like when it's wrong unless it's meant to be wrong, and so then it doesn't know the difference between when the eyes are meant to be wrong and when they're not, and so it just errs on the side of making the eyes perfectly right as often as it possibly can.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that basically covers everything. Oh, one other thing. A long time ago, one of the very first office hours, I had suggested the idea of using a different, rather than using RGB, using something like HSV or some other encoding system to get it to see images closer to the way humans do. And you said you were going to look into that. Did anything ever come of that?
It's on our list, but we have not actually gotten to do it yet. It's kind of a bigger changing those parts of the things is always kind of big.
All right. I was just curious if anything happened with that.
No, it's definitely on our list. We have yeah, we kind of every month we're like, oh fuck, we got to change that stuff. Right now we're actually just trying to get more data in there. That's our biggest project. Like just more data rather than like trying to change the way it looks at the data. Because we kind of have a pretty good sense of like there's a lot of areas it just doesn't have enough knowledge for, and that the general knowledge will get really like much better as we add some more in.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Mhm.
have a good day. Glad
Thank
to
you.
glad I could get in here and talk to you here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, I won't hold things up any longer here. I'm sure the chat will become restless if I take too long.
Oh, the chat,
Bye.
those guys,
All right.
and girls and such. Gender neutral statement. Here, we'll probably start. Probably soon. I'll probably start pushing more towards. We'll do some lightning round ones just to kind of make sure we can plow through a bunch of questions. But I'm always down to be nerd sniped on philosophy and the universe.
Hey, it's
Hello.
Stonesy here. I'm here to ask the Shy Guy questions today.
Right.
The first one was hopefully a nice quick one. There's an ongoing debate on the Facebook group to whether or not MidJourney can solve mathematical equations.
What do you mean? Like,
Um, I don't know.
it
That
does
was
sound
what the
good,
question
though.
I said.
It's not very good with language or symbols right now, and it doesn't do a lot of like intelligent processing of the text. Most of the intelligence is in the image area. I think in the future it might be able to do it a little bit, but right now it's definitely not looking at the words too hard. Like it looks at them just hard enough to kind of get like a vibe of what you're doing, but it doesn't process the words and think about them in that kind of logical way.
Cool. The next one was, is there any updates on the zoom in, zoom out features that
Yeah,
you've spoken about in the past?
not currently being worked on. We have some code for it, but it's definitely one of those things that we just don't quite have enough people for. But it is something that we have some code for. We will be able to do it at some point.
Okay, next question is, what's the ultimate goal of MidJourney? Is it a art creation tool, or are you looking to expand into something that goes just beyond art generation?
Mostly think about how the world the world has a lot of problems, and there isn't really any one solution that fixes it all. There's just like a lot of things we have to build. And so instead of sort of trying to focus on one problem, I think there's a certain element of focusing on creation broadly as a whole. Like, how do we create the things we need to create as a civilization to solve our problems? And so I kind of had this original theory of sort of the three pillars of creation, which is sort of reflection, imagination, and coordination. And you have to reflect on who you are and what you want. You have to imagine what could be, and then you have to coordinate with yourself or others to get there. So I felt like that there are these new forms of infrastructure that have to be built in the world to empower each of these three things. And if we could then build each of those, we could bring them together. And then you would have this infrastructure that could maybe empower people so greatly that we actually could change the world. And so right now, the focus is really a bit more focused on, like the focus is really a bit more on imagination, as one would assume. But already we see the sort of imaginative properties of MidJourney used as basically like reflective art therapy, as sort of community building. And I think we have a sense of how it's possible this stuff could broaden. And I think right now I don't have time to work on all three at once. But I do think that we can push the imagination pillar pretty far. And just by itself, it will be pretty overwhelmingly incredible. But I hope that as we push it further, we get to sort of start erecting the other pillars and people kind of get a bit of a flash of insight on how it might all come together. But I think that even for us, it's hard to fully wrap our heads around it. So that's kind of that. About,
Oh, fantastic.
Mhm.
And I think my last one for this evening is, what is a belief that you used to hold but don't hold anymore, and what caused you to change your mind?
Mm. We talked a bit about the language thing. That was definitely a good example earlier. I think another example was this. I think when I was younger, I was always sort of focused on this idea of a singular truth. The idea of there always being one way, one reason, one like reality in the world. And I think as I've gotten older, I've sort of appreciated that truth isn't really like a particle where either there's this truth particle here or this truth particle here. We have to figure out which one it is. It's much more of a wave, like light. In a single point in space, many beams of light can pass simultaneously without interacting with each other. So when you say what light is in this space, I mean, the answer really is any amount of light you want. And so I think this idea that very often you'll be in a situation where the question is like, who is right or what is right? And very often as I've grown older, I've seen that that everyone's been right, even when they seem like they're in conflict. Like the universe is big enough that it somehow can hold multiple simultaneous truths in a single situation that, might even seem in conflict, but they're not. One nice metaphor I heard somebody say is that you need two eyes because neither of them can see the full truth. That, the reality is sort of three-dimensional, and the only way to really get a sense of that dimension and that depth is to see it from multiple perspectives. And I think there's a bit of truth to that for sure. Not
Yeah,
to
I
talk
really like that. It's nice.
invoke the word of truth on truth, but there's a nice physical metaphor. And so just I think when I stopped trying to hold on to this idea of like a singular truth, I think the world kind of became less black and white, but it also kind of gained a lot of depth. And I think the depth is really valuable. And I do think that it's something that everybody needs a bit more of. But yeah, I don't know. Even a lot of people that like I've encountered that I didn't like. There was somebody who was really mean to me, and I was talking to their business partner over dinner, and I was about to tear his partner down and be like, this guy's being an asshole, blah 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 blah. And for some reason, like a wave of calmness came over me, and instead of being mad, I just asked my friend, like, oh, how's your business partner doing? And he said, oh, terrible. Like his wife has this illness and her immune system just collapsed, and he has to like visit her in a clean room right now. And I realized like, oh, like he was being an asshole, but also like all these terrible things were happening in his life, and it wasn't really about me. It was just about sort of, his general emotional state,
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a great example. I think that might have actually been what caused me to kind of back out, where it was like, okay, he's being an asshole, but also I would be an asshole to just be calling him an asshole right now. There's obviously more depth going on to the universe than that,
Yeah. Yeah.
And sort of backing out and kind of holding that judgment, and instead of saying, oh, this person's a bad person, instead, sort of example, just asking like, well, how are they doing? Are they okay? Asking questions and sort of passing judgments really does create a lot of depth on things. Anyway, that's it.
That's it from me as well. Thank you very much
Okay.
for your time. And
Alright.
if we get a lot more questions, I'll probably be back.
All right, let's do some lightning rounds. All right, we'll just do some quick questions from a bunch of people, and I'll try to plow through them faster. But again, you can snipe me on philosophy, but nothing else. Or
Hey,
spit.
thanks for taking my
Or-
call. This isn't too much of a lightning question, but maybe you could
That's okay.
answer it. one of the things I've been thinking about was the speed at which AI is being integrated into many facets of society, and comparing that to social media, which you could, I think make an argument is equally integrated throughout, just all of society. One of the ideas is that the problems of social media, doom scrolling, QAnon, deep fakes, or the problems that many people identify in social media, the trouble with fixing them is because of that integration. Like, you have these sort of GDP impacting potential risks of really messing around with those things. And so with AI, which seems to have similar set of risks, arguably more potent ones, such as trust collapse or reality collapse, or synthesizing your child's voice to scam you, and things like that, it seems to be being integrated into society at even a faster rate. That if you look at the adoption rate of ChatGPT, it's way higher than even the most popular social aspects or social media platforms. So since this integration is going, and it's going super fast, shouldn't we think about this being that moment where we could say, let's work on these potential risks before it's integrated into every facet of society, and not necessarily mute the research or the academic or the R&D aspect of it, but specifically the exposure to the public, and more extensively corporations, commerce, all the other elements that social media and seemingly AI will soon occupy. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is going to be coordination. I think that fundamentally, um, a lot of this world is a lot of the sort of Western world is dominated by competition, other than coordination and collaboration. And so I think the question is going to be like, will people be able to coordinate and collaborate enough to build safeties, or will it have to be sort of weirdly chaotic and decentralized? And I don't know. I am worried about that. I think that I'm not sure if we can count on like anybody working with us to create more safety in the world around this stuff. I think there are things that we can do to make our stuff safer, but I think that like what we can do will potentially be limited based off of what others can actually work with us to do. And I don't. I'm a little hopeful that I can try to get it to be better than worse, but I would say that's my number one concern right now. And as an example, like I could build a tool that could tell if any image was made by MidJourney or other AI systems, but at the end of the day, like if nobody actually uses that anywhere, then it's not solving anything, right? Yeah, we'll see what happens. And then on top of that, like I could lock things down a lot on the platform. Like I can make it so people could only make pictures of kittens. We have no investors. We could just suddenly, there's nothing legally stopping us from just making everything all cats all the time, but then you'd be reducing people's freedom a lot. And that's probably going too far, even though I like cats. And to be honest, full cat journey, I still have a lot of fun, but trying to then balance the sort of freedom we give the users with the sort of total lack of regulation on the and frankly restraint on the social network side, I think is a challenging combination. And then you combine that together with a lot of the sensationalism of journalism, and then some of the how should I say, ruthlessness of modern politics. I think there's some risk, with all that together. So I'm
As a
thinking really about what we can do on the politics side. I think there's definitely some things we can do, and on the journalism side, I think we don't have enough examples yet of like what's the risk, like what the risks are to fully think about it. But I do think the politics is probably easier. Like we just don't really want people using these things,
as
in
a sensational,
politicized ways.
sorry, as a sensational example, one of the quotes I had seen recently was that 50% of the AI safety people in the world, which is, dwarfed by the developers, but a real cohort, think there's a 10% chance or greater that AI, could eliminate human life through whatever, science fiction idea you want to come up with. Is that laissez-faire attitude you're describing matching the potential risks that unchecked AI, which is my second question, potentially introduces? Because I think many people say the same thing, which is coordination is kind of the only way through it all. But even someone as versed as in the ins and outs of all that as you seem skeptical that that is a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with the sort of fear mongering industry is that a lot of people who are doing that right now basically make a living by making people scared. And so, this was an issue during the Cold War where all of our generals were talking about how like Russia was going to, was super dangerous. And then it turned out after the collapse of the Soviet Union, they never really were that dangerous. It was kind of a paper tiger, they said. Like obviously the nukes were real, but like a lot of other stuff, like economically, they were riding themselves into the ground to build the tanks, And then I think there's a similar thing where people with China, where they talk about like, oh, China is so dangerous, we need way more money for our, so please give us more money for our military. And then at the same time, what's happening is, yeah, I think the guy who was saying that 10% thing was potentially misquoting a survey that somebody else was doing because they were trying to raise money to create a for-profit AI safety company. So I think there's a challenge around like, I would generally say if somebody's trying to raise money, you should significantly distrust. Like you kind of need to almost distrust. You really need to kind of be careful with what they're saying, So I definitely like, I think military generals raise money. They need to say like, we want more budget. You have the safety people trying to raise money. Like the guy who said that is trying to raise money for a for-profit AI safety company. I don't know why we need for-profit AI safety companies, frankly. Yeah, and there's one reason. Yeah, I don't know. Like, and the reason why I can call that out is because I'm not raising any money, and that we don't have any investors. But like, there really is an incredible amount of horseshit people say when they're raising money, and I just think that like, I almost think that there should be like a legal disclosure requirement where it's like, AI is going to kill everybody. By the way, I'm raising money for a for-profit AI lab. And like it just seems really disingenuous for people to do those things and not disclose that, and then on the flip side, like somebody might say, oh, David, you're pro pictures because you make money off pictures or something, right? And I think that's a legitimate thing for someone to question, but then I think it's sort of unfair to say, oh, this person thinks that AI is going to kill everybody, but then no one talks about how they're trying to literally raise money for a for-profit safety company. You know what I mean? Like that's where it kind of becomes sort of uneven, and in a way where like if it was even, then I think that sounds a lot shadier, frankly. And not specifically to speak to them personally, I just think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that in the industry where people say crazy shit when they're raising money. Not just tech companies, but war generals and politicians and everyone basically. And I don't know. I kind of find that a bit frustrating. And I mean, to think this is one of the reasons why the journalists have these same problems is they're being super sensationalist with clickbaity titles because like they need to sell ads to stay in business. And I think it's possible that people actually don't click the other articles very much. It's possible that the sensational bullshit articles are literally what keeps a lot of these news organizations in business, And so it's almost like we have to sacrifice something to, we have to sacrifice some of the truth to like keep the industry around or something. I'm not sure exactly what they're saying internally, but there's definitely something fucked up there. Yeah. And then on top of that, like, I mean, like there was the person who was doing the fake Trump arrest photos. They were raising money too. They were like, check out these fake Trump photos. Everybody donate money to me. And I don't know. It definitely fucks with me a little bit because it's sort of like all these people, for some reason, all these people who say that they're like trying to bring some great truth, they're all just trying to like literally raise money, And it's like obviously like you need to feed your family, you need to have like a house and whatever, but like I feel like there's some line. I don't know. And I think there's a lot of like disingenuous stuff there. I don't know. It definitely is frustrating. I mean, yeah, the 10% thing is pretty. Well, I don't know. There's two sides to that. I think first off, that particular thing was not actually correct. It was like sort of a factually incorrect reporting of the survey.
Got it.
And then the second thing is like, when you ask a lot of AI people, like, how is AI going to kill the world? They'll say things like, oh, it's going to email a protein printing company sort of special data that will turn into a army of nano machines. And then you like go ask the biologist, like, did that make sense? They go, that was totally incoherent. This person clearly doesn't know anything about anything besides computers. And so like you get a lot of there's a lot of AI people when they're scared right now. They usually talk about how like the risks they're talking. You're like, if you say, well, how could the AI hack all the missiles? And they go, of course the AI can't hack the missiles. Like there's lots of there's literally no way to hack the missiles. They're not connected to the internet. They're not connected to computers that way. But they'll be able to like print nano machines out with like protein printers. Like they'll pick something that they don't know anything about, and then say that's the risk. And then if you talk to those people, they go, well, no, that doesn't make any sense. And so there's definitely like some weird situation where I think that ascertaining the risk of some of these things requires a breadth of knowledge that a lot of the people who are scared don't actually have. And so in theory, you'd want to get everybody together and you'd want the computer people like saying, oh, this is what we think is dangerous. And you'd have the biology, well, we think this is dangerous. And everyone would get together and cross-reference each other and say, well, okay, well, this is what's actually dangerous. Yeah, I'm not actually very concerned about the risk of these things to civilization. I think that it's actually the opposite. I think that like civilization is in trouble if we don't keep building things. Like if we kind of stopped, things wouldn't stabilize. I think they would just decay. So I think that it's sort of, there's only two choices, I think. It's sort of growth or decay. And I think it's not really about growth. It's always like transformation. So like things kind of always have to change. And the question is, are they going to change in ways that are bigger and grander? Or are they going to change in ways that are sort of like decaying and, destructive? I don't know. But there's a lot of messed up stuff, I feel like. Like it's easy to talk about like, it's easy to talk about like about how people. There's definitely a lot of people who don't want the world to change, but there's definitely also like a lot of things that need to change.
Big time. My second question is hopefully a little more succinct. Which is the idea that there's a possibility the amount of data to train AI on is not as inconceivable as you would common sense might dictate, and that there's a little bit of a throttle on AI development, as perhaps ludicrous as that sounds, based on not having the data available that the language models could train on. And so what does the idea of training a AI on AI created content do? Does that potentially, if you still have a threshold to determine whether or not the training was a success and this model was better, could you potentially eliminate the limited amount of data by having it trained on AI data? And really the second part of that question is if that happens and it is a viable way to improve the AI, isn't that an acceleration to the point where you're starting to get to that, you're a little bit nervous that because it's hard to know where an AI sometimes learned Portuguese Or does this AI have the ability to teach someone how to make nerve gas? Like, how do we test that necessarily, or even think of that? Does AI training on AI data potentially put sort of like an exponential curve on improvement on top of an exponential curve on and so forth, to the point where again, back to that risk question, which I think you eloquently addressed, is that a area of that particular sphere that you find problematic, not problematic?
Um, so on the text model sides, they're starting to run out of data. So that's interesting. And it's very hard to create new text data, at least that's high quality, because there aren't that many people in the world who can write really good text. The image models yet haven't run out. We are still actually not training on that much data. We're going to try to train on more data and see like how much data is necessary. But it is actually much easier to collect image data than it is to collect text, because anybody with a smartphone can take a photo, but most people with a smartphone can't write like a sophisticated sentence, you know? I don't, that sounds really bad, but I don't know. I mean, everyone kind of knows that like, like the writing ability is, you know, we don't really encourage really high writing ability in civilization, you know? But yeah. And so, like it's possible to, like all you need to do to collect image data is to take a photo. And most of the AI is learning from just photos of things. Like it's learning about lighting and 3D and like every type of dog species. So that just needs a lot of pictures basically to learn about the world. So I mean, there's not really a universe where like, even if every single image on the internet was made by an AI, which is pretty ridiculous, the world still exists and you can take photos of the world. So I don't think there's a risk of AI running out of images in the way that there's a risk of AI running out of text. I think AI has kind of already run out of text. And what they're doing in the text field is they're starting to try to get the AIs to generate data that then they can retrain on. And so one example of this is they ask the AI to generate computer code. And if the computer code successfully like solves a problem that they can test, it like adds that back to the data set. And so sometimes what will happen is it might actually only solve the computer code problem 1 out of every 10 times, but then you keep running it over and over again, and then you collect all these examples and you put it back in and it keeps getting better. So there's some evidence that you can kind of pull up from your own bootstraps with text if you want to. I think with images, there hasn't really been as much study of that yet. But I think with images, it'll be less necessary too. Yeah, it's you can just take a lot of cameras or drones or smartphones, or there's a lot of ways to take photos, and our stuff seems to still be learning from photos. So, you know, yeah, there's like some person every month they complain about how we don't draw a certain species of dog well enough, and I always kind of laugh a little bit because it's like completely legitimate. You know, there's this one type of dog they really like. It's probably the kind of dog they own, but it doesn't do that dog well because it's kind of a slightly unusual dog species, you know? And yeah. Yeah.
One recommendation for reading, thanks for your time today, is City of Silence by Warren Ellis. It's a comic, but what it deals with is a society where the speed of innovation is so rapid that innovation pretty much has to be sort of locked down and constrained. And it was written a long time ago, so it's more like, 3D printers at 7-Eleven printing out viruses and the like. But it does have you had lamented once that it was hard to find science fiction that still felt futuristic. I think it is particularly well suited towards today's age. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty hard to figure out, like, I think a lot of this narrative stuff is really challenging nowadays, like, again, with like all the people trying to raise money, people trying to like sell ads and make these articles, and I don't know, it's I struggle to try to figure out how to like help get better information out there. Oh, somebody says they hear like this bass sound. That's a foghorn. Like by a place with a foghorn right now. Sorry. Anyway, hello B.
Hello. I just had wanted to talk about the filters and biases and limitations really of MidJourney and what I've noticed and maybe ways that we can improve it. Um, so I'm creating a story with MidJourney. Don't want to get too much into that, but some of the limitations that I found were getting images where the main person is a little bit at a distance and the camera angle isn't directly in front of the person, right? With them staring directly onto the screen. And that one is a really big limitation. And I think, well, bias really, just to have the character directly in front of the shot, staring right back at the camera. Maybe getting some suffixes that use specific pools of data, and we can add that, and using that as a tool might be a good way to get around that because it limits so much other stuff. Like there's a bias if you are trying to create a combat scene and you have this, if you explain a character in too much detail, it'll put that character facing the camera, and then it'll put whoever be in combat with directly behind them, right? And it's just a common thing for that to happen. So I was wondering, do you have any tools in development that we might be able to have access to eventually that could help us with these limitations and biases and working around them? Uh, and also, is there going to be like cartoonish violence allowed eventually, like being punched in the face, like stuff like very minor?
It should be okay already.
No, it's like even some images just like of cartoons punching each other in the face, like it'll not let me use it just in describe and whatnot. And yeah,
We'll have to
working around.
maybe send you some examples. We're trying to collect examples. We're gonna try to. We have a lot of ideas for the moderation stuff. I think the goal is to try to get almost everything through that isn't really bad.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that cartoon violence should be fine.
But yeah, but the main question is just like giving us the tools we need to work around the limitations and biases that are already present in MidJourney. Like a simple one would be giving us control of what camera angle we're searching for, right? So even if it's just like a degree, right? Like 180 degree, the 36 degree, 270, like something like that. Like where you just have the degree around the character and it uses specific pools of data to work on that, or that's one of them. Also distance, like close up, just normal is you wouldn't need anything because it already does normal. And then and close up it does pretty well too if you just write close up. But at a distance it seems to have trouble multitasking, keeping characters consistent and also moving the camera away from the character.
Yeah, so some of this is it's really just related to the language system. Like it kind of blurs words together sometimes and it has a hard time keeping track of spatial concepts. And so I hope that a lot of these things will just be fixed with a V6 or a V7 release and that we don't have to specifically build a tool to fix it. The things that, of course, don't get fixed, we will try to build more controllability into fixing them. But I think it's challenging where, like people used to say we should have a bunch of tools just to make the faces look better, but now the faces look fine, so it's not an issue. And so we kind of have to balance sort of short-term issues with long-term solutions. So I think I'm hoping that V6 and V7 fixes a lot of things that you're concerned about. If not, I think one day we'll have some tools that let you kind of do the compositionality manually yourself.
Even multitasking it seems to have an issue with. So if you describe two things in too great a detail, it'll blur those things together and it'll refuse to, make them two separate objects. Or let's say if you had a girl and you describe her perfectly and you put her in a separate weight bracket and you describe a man, a muscular man, it'll make the girl muscular. It'll switch their hair colors and things like that. As soon as you get too intricate with your prompts, it kind of loses focus almost.
Yeah, so that has to do with the specific way that it's reading and storing the words internally. It just doesn't have enough space. And so when it runs out of space, it kind of blends things together. And so that is something that's definitely going to get fixed in the sort of V6, V7 timeframe. Basically,
Alright.
once we replace our language system, a lot of those things just that's going to get fixed. That's very well understood.
All right. Thank you for your time. That's it.
Thank you.
Hello. How's it going?
Hello. Good.
So today I wanted to ask you about if there was any planned updates to the UI UX of the alpha site.
Yes, it's going to change a lot.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, and one of the it's kind of nowhere near where it needs to get to before we get everybody on it, but it's we're trying to have more people in and trying to get there, and I think in the next month or two we're gonna make a lot of progress. But for now, we just don't have enough people, I think, on it.
Yeah, I was playing around with it, and it's really cool. I love the prompting on there. It's like there's features on there that I didn't even know I wanted. But yeah,
Okay.
blending on the alpha site has been so much fun.
That's cool. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. That was really the only question I had. Yeah. I hope you have a great day.
You too.
Kinky, you're muted if you're trying to talk.
I was just about to ask if you could hear me, and I'm like, I don't want to be one of those. So I had a quick question for you. I don't know if you noticed, but there's been kind of a bit of tension brewing in the VC text area lately. And I just wanted to make it clear to everybody who thinks that they know what's going on and what kind of questions you enjoy taking and what kind of questions you'd rather not answer. Could you maybe give us a little bit of insight on that?
1 second. Say it again.
I'm just wondering if maybe you could help us out because a lot of people in the chat feel like they know what you want to talk about and what kind of questions you would like to answer and what kind of questions that you wouldn't want to answer and what kind of questions and conversation is appropriate for office hours. So I was just wondering if maybe you wanted to help clear that up because it's your thing.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm really just trying to make space for everybody else, and it's interesting to me to hear what kind of questions people are asking, naturally in an unprompted way, more so than me trying to get specific questions, frankly. Like I'm trying to kind of, I get to kind of sort of like lets me get to know everybody and lets me sort of hear what sort of things are at the top of mind for everyone, and those are all just like important things to have in sort of a less filtered way. So like, I feel pretty good with how it is. I don't really need to. Nobody needs to change who they are for me. So yeah, if anything, I'm probably just gonna get better at giving short answers sometimes.
No, I love that. That was just, my rapid fire question for the week because it just seems like everyone in the comment section thinks that they know what this place should be. And I thought maybe, maybe you know it better than anybody else would, and it would be nice for you to tell them.
Definitely things that I have. I mean, I think it's kind of a push and shove in that, like, I'm gonna sit up here and I'm gonna have answers for people in a certain style. And I'm gonna say certain things, and that's kind of me, kind of creating some influence on the community. But then on the flip side, the community can bring whatever the fuck they want to bring, and it's and whatever we are is some combination of those two stuff,
And would you say that it would be good or bad for the people in the comments section to be nicer to each other and not criticize people while they're talking on stage?
Yeah, I think generally be nice is a good rule for life.
So you would say that you're for politeness?
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
for
there's politeness
too.
and then I feel like there's politeness and there's niceness. And I feel like I don't know. There's some weird distinction there. I'm trying to figure out what that is.
I understand.
I feel like I like nice over polite, but I'm
Yeah,
not sure if I fully understand what that distinction is.
perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to get that in there because it's been happening for a few weeks, and it even happened to me once. But I wanted to put that out there and make sure everybody knows that you know what you want to talk about and that you're a big boy and they don't have to protect you from question askers and that you're literally here to answer questions.
I'm
Um,
literally here to answer questions.
All right, David. Thanks for having me up, and I hope you have a great week.
Of course, you too.
Bye.
Cool.
Uh,
I have one question, and then I have possibly like a really stupid question. I was wondering if it would ever be possible for you and Rambling Rhubarb to do an office, like a joint Niji MidJourney office hour sometime.
I don't know if I can do that many more office hours. I'm gonna do one a week, and then I do an internal one every week, and then
Okay.
I'm just really exhausted, honestly.
Just like a
And so I
pop-up
think
one
we're
time
gonna
or
have
something,
more
just like a
people.
special.
What's that?
Yeah. Just like a pop-up one time with you and Rambling Rhubarb one time would just be really cool.
It's good feedback. I mean, for now, I'm trying to get through. I'm like a little. I guess I didn't really. Nobody said, "How are you doing, David?" But I've just been like a little overwhelmed underwater lately in a lot of ways. So I'm not taking on any. I'm not taking on any more additional
Yeah,
things
yeah.
that involve speaking for the moment. But I maybe one day in the future when I have a little more time.
And then possibly a really stupid question. I watched that one video about the open letter to AI or whatever. About and the one thing I did take away was that like the one breakthrough was that with transformers, essentially, if you have enough data, anything can be turned into a sort of language. So like, if you, I have no idea how the hell I would do this, but like if you could collect enough empathy data, would you be able to make some kind of empathy language of a sort? Does that make sense?
Yeah, basically. I mean,
Yeah, just like figure out what
language
the data is.
is kind of a strange word. I guess what does it mean? Um, just because it learns a language of its own doesn't mean it's a language we can learn too. But you can definitely make AIs that are empathic. I think that's a good area of research to do. It would be cool, actually, if we put more research into AI empathy, like broadly, instead of just AI, instead of just artificial intelligence, like artificial empathy does sound rather bad, doesn't it? Because you don't
Yeah,
want
not
the empathy
artificial
like
empathy. I was kind of
like
thinking because you were talking about animism, so I was thinking more like making like the spirit of Gaia almost in a sense that like you just a it's just an AI that's only job is empathy, but obviously not that's not to emulate empathy, but is to like I guess in a weird way to have genuine empathy. That's weird. Yeah, I
yeah,
don't
yeah, that's
know.
interesting. I think that um yeah, I mean it's interesting. Like, how important is it that the AI actually feels empathy versus that the AI helps us? There's
Yeah,
an
just like
argument that
empathy for
actually
everything. Yeah.
there's an argument that it helping us is actually the first, because like if it felt nothing but it helped us, that is better than it feeling but not helping us. Um, yeah, in theory we just want to be helped. And we want it to behave empathically. Whether or not it actually experiences the empathy is a really interesting question. I think the current systems are not quite sophisticated enough yet to be conscious on that level. But they can definitely be caring and they can be responsive. Yeah, I definitely think that there's something there. In general, I think using AI to help us sort of like reflect and I was going to say reflect and feel, but Well, that
I
doesn't
almost thought of
feel
it
like
as
enough
like
for
a
that. But yeah.
I almost thought of it as like a permanent, like the feeling you have when you're on shrooms, where you're like, I have empathy for literally everything I see and can think of. And like that's almost like that's like the closest I could think of like a state that humans can be of like pure empathy by choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely something that it's definitely an area that's important to research. Like, yeah, not just researching intelligence, but researching empathy.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out how to gather empathy data right now, without knowing anything programming yet. But I'm looking to do it. But it's just an interesting thought experiment at the moment to be like, what? Because obviously the first thing is like, well, yeah, it's artificial empathy, which can obviously be weaponized, but you do want some kind of like empathy layer. Like maybe like that could be a way to possibly fix an alignment problem if there's just a straight up empathy layer. But yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to say whether some of this just like naturally comes out of the AI's understanding language in the world, or how much needs to be explicitly codified, and how much of it is awareness versus. It's definitely like a difference between awareness and empathy, you know. But like maybe awareness is actually is like arguably a big part of that. I don't know. It's I think it's sort of it's an unclear. The answer to your question is unclear. All I could say is that it is a good question. I like it.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah.
Of course.
What's up? Nice to be up here. How's it going? So, my question is related to a book that I really love. I got into it when I was working in VR and just became fascinated with 3D tooling that let you author 3D in 3D. It's called The Educated Mind by Kieran Egan. And it's about how like cognitive tools shape our understanding. And the basic premise is like our understanding of the world is based on our understanding of language at certain ages. And he has different categories like romantic understanding, philosophical, semantic, etc. But I'm wondering if you see the future of prompting, text prompting, as leaning more towards like a romantic and poetic understanding of the prompt, or more of a philosophical understanding that's more systematic and theoretic thinking?
I think we're trying to do both, but whether or not there's a trade-off is a profound question. But we have a good we have good theories for what causes each. We just haven't we haven't had the time to try to do both at the same time in a better way. So I'd like to hopefully both. Yeah. In theory, it should like get to know what you
Can
like
you elaborate
anyway.
on any of those theories?
Well, there's definitely like the more childlike the AI is, the sort of more vibey it is, and then the more intelligent it is, the more like specific it gets in a lot of ways. And but there's like different ways of sort of making it overly specific versus sort of there's ways to try to constrain its specificity to kind of still make it vibey. I don't think I can give it a great level of depth, but I think at the end of the day, you probably want it to just kind of get to know you and give you the kind of stuff you want. I don't know if it's necessarily possible to make it give everybody what they want, at least with 4 images. Maybe if it gives everybody 64 images, then it can always give you what you want. And then you're like kind of doing this more iterative flow with a larger set of images. But with the current sort of user interface, it's pretty bottlenecked by just how many guesses it can make for you, with how much information it has about you.
which is none right now. It doesn't really have any information about you right now, so just kind of totally guessing, like making all people the same, you know.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it'll ever get to a point of like understanding irony, for example?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward. I think
Cool.
that's like it's gonna understand, I think, everything quite well. I think, but no matter how much it understands, sort of, if you only give it a couple guesses, making sure it guesses what everybody wants without knowing anything about them is probably not possible. The only way to make it give everybody what they want and have all the possible interpretations is to either give more simultaneous images or to kind of personalize and remember stuff about every person and make better guesses.
I see,
So
got
we're
it.
gonna try to do a little bit of both, and we'll see where it ends up.
Yeah. I'm curious if it ends up being something that is still more text driven or it becomes more visual tools and like GUIs to help us drive that personalization a little bit more. Uh, Maybe where we can start with the more childlike concept or more basic idea, uh, and then essentially fine tune the results with, uh, you know, different sorts of tooling. One guy mentioned like being able to move the camera, for example. Obviously, there's like in painting or adjusting things within certain layers of the image. I'm excited. I don't expect answers to these questions now, but I'm excited to see how direction you guys head. But if you are leaning more towards tools or text and can mention that, that'd be great.
I think it's gonna get a lot better at text, but also we're gonna have like much more visual interfaces that rely less on text too. So I think the goal is to make it a lot easier for people who are less linguistically experienced, and then we also want to make it a lot better for people who do have that ability. So I think we kind of have to go in both directions. I do think it's probably slightly more important to make it better for people who are not as good at words, just because I think right now there's a pretty large swath of like people under 25 who struggle with the tool just due to like raw linguistic ability. And the current user base is on average, quite a bit older than that. So most people who are here don't have that problem. But we do see a lot, if you just take like a random subset of the population, the younger people are struggling a lot more with the tool than the older people, just because of that. And so it seems important to kind of broaden that a little bit. But obviously there are some young people who are fucking masters of the word, you know.
Yeah, I've seen some of them online, and it's interesting how you mentioned like the younger audience is using a lot more images than text in their prompts, which I found pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I think
25.
the image prompts are still like a pretty underutilized thing.
Definitely, what you guys do with blending is insane. It blows my mind.
It's pretty cool.
I love how much easier it is to work with images in the alpha. Oh, and I'm sure as that gets better and better, it's gonna uh, work even more. And real quickly before I jump, I also had a question on like mood boarding and referencing collections. I'm wondering if that is something different than image blending. Like if I put 10 image URLs in a prompt and then prompt against it, is that the same as having like a mood board that I'm referencing or a collection that I'm referencing that has those same images, or does it work slightly differently?
The mood board basically just like appends a fuck ton of image prompts, but it makes a really easy way to do that.
Got it. Okay. You can essentially do that by just putting a bunch of image URLs in a regular Imagine prompt and prompting on top of it.
Yep.
All right, that's all I had. I appreciate the time.
Of course, thank you. Ancient, do we have anybody else? Or I think that's it for the day.
Got one more quick one for you and then wrap up.
Okie we'll do one more. All right. Hello, J May. You're on mute. We cannot hear you.
Hey, is that better?
Hello, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, great. Lately I've been I just give you a bit of background. I'm sort of like one of these like VFX supervisor types. So I come from visual effects background, doing a bunch of CG stuff. But for personal work, I mean, I love what you guys are doing for MidJourney, and I'm almost a member for a year now, and around like the 50,000 image category. And
Wow.
what I've been doing is sort of personal animations using MidJourney as the starting prompt because I love the aesthetic, and then sort of bringing it into like Google Collab Stable Diffusion, sort of or Deform Diffusion to get some animated stuff going. And I'm not. I mean, I think it's a really cool aesthetic because I'm sort of coming up with my own thing, referencing dead artists essentially. So like we're talking like ancient dead artists. So I think it's looking great. The only thing is the Stable Diffusion doesn't really hold up the initial sort of prompt aesthetic of MidJourney. So my question in a long-about way is, do you guys have any sort of future around or thoughts on actual animation in MidJourney and prompting along those lines?
We're definitely looking at making things move. I think there's a lot of ways that could turn out. Like, do you mean like the infinite zoom kind of move, or the blending moves, or the like walking down the street move? What
Yeah,
kind of
I mean that kind of thing, but I'm doing it in a super, just picture it like a super subtle way. I'm not trying to like do the infinite zoom type thing where it's like I that gets old really fast. It's like more of like a slow push in, and it's like ethereal, like stuff's changing and moving as it slowly pushes in or slowly pulls out. Um, but yeah, that kind of
Yeah, I
thing.
think we're looking at something like that. It may take us a while though, like, you know, 6 to 12 months, but when we do it, it's going to
Cool.
be really good. I think one of
That's
the
awesome.
challenges is that like our fundamental image quality is so high that it really
I
raises
know
the
it's
bar.
sick.
Though I'm saying the image quality is like so high, it really raises the bar for what movement has to look like, you know?
Ah, I got you.
Um,
I got you. But then even with,
and
the stop feature, right? I could stop it at 70% or 75, so it's just smoothed out or whatever, and it's not as heavy detailed. Like there's absolutely tons of different ways around that. So like
it's true.
I'm
Yeah.
excited about what's possible because you guys are like kicking ass.
I think our main
And
thing that we're trying to figure out is
sorry?
how we can. I think for us, we're trying to figure out like how do we bring things into 3D and how do we bring things into motion in a way that doesn't like have to make a huge compromise on the quality, you know?
Gotcha.
Where it feels more like you can just kind of iterate in 2D and then flip to motion in 3D.
Gotcha. One
So
thing, I
it's
don't know if
harder to
you're
do it
aware of it.
that way. Go ahead.
There's one cool thing to look at. I think there's these guys who basically installed like I think a Stable Diffusion sort of API in Houdini, the 3D application, and basically you can text from Houdini and it generates a point cloud like in the actual environment. And so there's like
Mhm.
I think this just was just released like 2 days ago. So having that type of thing in the context of like you know um, these 3D applications, I think would also be like another step of like awesomeness because it adds that sort of level of control that that